Hi everyone, John Davenport here from Photogrammetry.com with another Let's Edit video. This week we're going to take a look at this sunset photograph here. It's a pretty simple edit. We can just kind of dive in and then I'll talk you through it. As you can see here, it's a sunset photo, and often with a sunset photo, if you're not using a graduated filter, you're going to have issues where your foreground's either going to be underexposed or your sky will be overexposed. Here I chose to expose pretty much for the sky and then keep the foreground a little underexposed, and then we'll just fix that with Lightroom here. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab my graduated filter, reset everything back to 0, and just drag it in here from the bottom right hand corner, and then make it maybe about center or so, maybe a little lower than center here, but something like that. And the reason I'm coming from the bottom right is because that is the darkest part of this photo, and I want to make sure that we can kind of balance it all out. So I'm going to actually raise the exposure a little bit, maybe a stop and a half, and I'm going to also add a little bit of shadow here, maybe about 50 or so. And that kind of just brings that back in. It doesn't look like much yet, but once we start playing around with the basic panel here, we'll be able to kind of fine-tune everything. So that should bring us down to the basic panel, and I think the first thing I'm going to do is just add maybe another half a stop or so of light in the exposure here, and then I'm going to also bring in a little bit more shadow detail, and that'll start to lighten everything else up. And then the next thing here is we're going to drop the highlights down almost all the way, maybe minus 80, minus 90, something like that. And that'll start to darken up the colors in the sky and really start to bring color into these clouds as well. Maybe add a little bit of white and drop a little bit of the blacks down. And that's something that I've talked about before. When you reduce the highlight slider and when you raise the shadow slider, you end up kind of getting these like muddled looks. It kind of looks bad sometimes. So to offset those, you can go the opposite direction with the other sliders that affect those. So I'll often reduce the highlight slider, but I'll raise the whites, and I'll often raise the shadow slider, but I'll reduce the blacks, and it kind of adds a really good contrast to the photograph. Speaking of contrast, I am going to come in here and add just a little bit more contrast using the contrast slider, and I am going to come back up to the exposure and add maybe another half a stop or so. So now we're up about +1 on that slider there. So I think we're in pretty good shape. Again, here's where we started, and we've really opened up the foreground, and we've added a little bit of light up here, even in the sky, which really helps define these clouds. The next thing I am going to do is I'm going to change the white balance around a little bit. I'm going to go a little bit cooler, maybe down around 52, 5300, something like that. And I'm also going to add a little bit of magenta to it by raising the tint slider up, maybe +10 or so, and that'll just give a little more color to the scene, liven it up a little bit, and add some color to these clouds. So I think we're in good shape. The next thing, of course, is to come down to our detail tab, and we just want to go in here and again sharpen things up a little bit. I'm going to raise the radius slider up. I'm not going to touch the detail slider too much, but I am going to go into the masking slider and probably do something about this. That way, the horizon line gets to be sharpened and all the hard lines around the clouds are sharp, but a lot of it stays kind of untouched because we want that nice smoothness that's created from this long exposure. That reminds me, I don't think I actually went over the settings I used for this shot, so now's a good time to do that. Here we have ISO 100, 11 millimeters, f10, and 1.3 seconds. So we did have that long exposure, and as you can see, because of that, my geese here are kind of blurry, definitely moving around a little bit in the frame. So one thing that I did do is in Photoshop, I actually went in and I composited a image that I took, which was actually shot at ISO 4000 of this very same scene. And by shooting at ISO 4000, I was able to get to about 1/30th of a second for shutter speed, and that froze those geese in place enough so that it looks like they're just sitting there rather than moving around, which I think was cool. Now, for this particular photo, you can go in and you can clone out the geese if you want. And, by doing that, you basically remove, I'm going to switch over to my heal tool here just because I think that will work a little better. That way you kind of remove the distraction of having, blurry geese, and you still get the nice benefit of the sunset here. So something like that. We need to clean this one up a little bit, I think, here. Go this way, maybe. Something like this. It's not going to be perfect, but for a quick job, it looks okay. And by removing those geese, I think it does help, make the scene a little better. But if you want to see how I add that highest O shot back into this, I'll put a link in the description below, and that way we'll have that as kind of a bonus if you're into that type of thing. I know a lot of you don't have access to Photoshop, so that's why I don't want to kind of jump into that, because it really wouldn't benefit a lot of people. But if you are interested, it's there for you in the description below. Continuing on with this edit, however, we're going to go to our lens correction tool, and we're going to remove chromatic aberrations. And that'll really just I don't know how bad they are in this photo, but a lot of times I'll just do it anyway. I know I haven't been showing it a lot in the videos, but it is something that I normally do when I process. You can see here actually, so if I uncheck this, you can see up along these trees, if you look really closely, I'm not sure how it's going to come through on YouTube, but you can see a little bit of pink fringing there. If I click on this, it disappears. So it's usually something good to use, especially if you're using cheaper glass, which often has that problem. And then there's also this water tank in the background here. I'm just going to come in really quickly and just clone that out, just so it's not in the frame. It's not something that's hugely noticeable, but being able to remove it if you can is a good option. So I like this pretty good. I think we're pretty close to done here. You can always come in and add a slight vignette to the photo if you want. I'd probably add something like this with a really large feathering effect, and maybe kind of something like that. Just draw the eyes right into the frame, because there really isn't a lot there. When the geese are in the middle of this frame here, you have a little bit more pulling the eyes in, so you might not need the vignette. But when you have just kind of an open scene like this, sometimes it helps to darken the borders, and that way people's eyes kind of stay in the frame. So anyway, I hope you learned something in this video. And again, if you want to learn a little bit more about how to create that composite image, check out the post in the link below. That'll be on Digital Photography School, which, as you know, I am a writer for. So anyway, thank you for watching. Have a great week, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now.